It's time for Upfront, a public service of Hall Communications.
And we are back. What do you know about that? It's Sunday morning once again. I'm Phil Marlowe. Yes, the show is Upfront. And if you're wondering what Upfront is, maybe this is your first time joining us, what we do is we take some time out of our broadcast week, in this case a half an hour, and we say, okay, we're going to put the music on the back burner, and that's exactly what we do. And once we've done that, we open our microphones to somebody out in our community, or possibly a group of people from out in the community that come in representing a particular organization, give them the breadth of our signal and say, have at it. Tell our audience all about what it is you do. And oftentimes, the folks that come in here are from nonprofits, the world of the 501c3s. These are folks who are really on the front lines out there doing really good work in communities all over the state. And oftentimes, they're sort of in your backyard, but you don't even know that they're there. So it's with programs like this that we take that time and give them a big microphone, in this case, the signal of our radio station, and let them sort of explain to you what it is they do. Our hope is that points of connection will be made. You'll go, wow, that's kind of cool. Didn't know those folks were even there. Or, they've got this event going on. Or, I know somebody who this could affect, maybe somebody in my family, a friend. Lots of different end results could happen with this program. And any and all are valid and true. So however it affects you is it's a personal thing. Oftentimes we have docs come in, doctors and medical people come in and explain stuff that's going on in the world of medicine, new advances, technology, and the like. And this morning, well, what do you know? It's one of those shows. And we have a first timer, and I'm very excited to have her in, because this is a topic that is, well, topical. And we're going to be speaking about the Zika virus in particular this morning. And my guest is Dr. Maria Mileno, who comes to us by way of university medicine at Miriam Hospital. And Dr. Mileno, thank you so much for getting up early on a Sunday morning and gracing our studios.
Well, Phil, thank you for having me. And there have been so many questions that are posed to us about the Zika virus as an infectious disease specialist.
It's been getting, I don't know if it's unfair share of publicity. It seems like the other viruses must be jealous because Zika's sort of taking up the front pages, isn't it?
Well, it certainly hasn't, in the front of our minds. But in addition, certainly many, many risks to travelers has been addressed at our travel medicine service at the Miriam, and so we become a focal point for these kinds of questions, and it's helped me to address our public in a different kind of way.
Yeah. Now, I had never heard of Zika until the ramp up for the Olympics, which we're now into, and of course everybody was saying, oh, should we send our athletes? Should we do this? Should we do that? And beyond that, how long has Zika been around? It just feels like it was created about, 2 months ago.
Invented just for publicity. No, well, it is a fairly newcomer in terms of the awareness of this virus. It wasn't until 2010 when there was a true epidemic in the island of Yap that it came to our attention in travel medicine.
Now I need a geography lesson. Where is the island of Yap?
It's out in Southeast Asia, in Oceania. There's an island called Yap, and about all of the people on that island came down with a febrile syndrome, and it was described. It wasn't at that time identified with any babies with microcephaly, but it was described in the travel medicine specialists. We all talked about it and talked about, well, what can we do to facilitate travel for our patients? That usually we talk about malaria, yellow fever, the shots that people need to go places and be safe from these more common illnesses. And then when odd ones come about, it becomes more topical for the specialists, and maybe not so for the general American public.
Right.
But now we really have something to to talk about.
Right. I mean, it's sort of akin in my mind to like the avian, the bird flu.
The bird
you
flu.
know, from
West
however
Nile
many.
virus.
Yeah, I mean that sort of came out of
Or
nowhere.
the West. Are you talking about West Nile virus, or there's the bird flu, which is another big thing. You know, there's so many infectious diseases that if you really are
We're going to need more
sitting
time.
at home on Sunday morning, I hope everyone's drinking enough coffee to enjoy that. But no, the avian flu is a form of influenza that was very contagious and
that was being
horrible.
passed around by like.
And we do worry that, everyone should be getting their flu shots each year because there may be a reassortment of the bird flu, again, with a human-style flu, which would make that virus far more contagious among individuals. And people do die of the flu every year. And that's probably our biggest mission, is to get people immunized
And that one came out of nowhere,
yes.
Maybe like 10 years ago.
But then the other bird-related one was a number of years ago, more than 10 years ago. The West Nile virus now is all over the United States, but that when there were dead birds, I grew up in the Bronx.
That's
we
right.
were talking about that.
Right.
There were dead birds in the Bronx Zoo that alerted people that there might be something going on, and it turned out to be West Nile virus, which hadn't come from it was mostly in the Middle East and not really described ever in the United States until they found it in this bird from the Bronx Zoo. And so then from there, it had spread in patients. We actually described the first case in Rhode Island of a woman with fever and belly pain and diarrhea and a headache, and it turned out to be West Nile virus. And subsequently, more and more cases. Right now, that West Nile virus is in every state.
Yeah. Is it not a wonder that we all don't have like a ton? It's just amazing that we as a people can keep on going year after year, day after day, and be relatively healthy.
Well, that's
but you
due
would think
to our
with all the
fabulous
travel and the ways that we can get around now, that all of these diseases would be coming at us from a million different directions, that we'd all be dead.
Well, no.
It scares me sometimes.
Well, I don't think people should be scared. We're very lucky to have a fantastic, fabulous immune system that our bodies have. So as far as West Nile virus, I bet there are many people, for example, who were exposed to it, who didn't get sick and have immunity to it at this point. That's one thing. As far as travel diseases, there are important preventions people should take because we are not exposed in this country, for example, to malaria. We have no immunity to that, as opposed to people who sometimes live all their lives in an endemic area for malaria. They develop a semi-immune state.
Really? I didn't think you could.
Yeah.
Oh.
So while there is still more morbidity from malaria, it's mostly for people who have never gone, and they should be taking their preventions against insect exposures and in many places malaria medication to clean up what gets in. One bite delivers 50 or 100 malaria parasites, for example, and they rush to your liver and multiply. So when persons going to Ghana or sub-Saharan Africa, where there's a very high intensity of mosquitoes that are infected with malaria parasites, they really should be on medication as well as preventing as many bites as possible.
Right. And thankfully, those mosquitoes, it's because of a certain strain of mosquito, or is it just a disease that's born of mosquitoes?
Well, the malaria parasite is transmitted through a specific type of mosquito.
Specific type of mosquito.
Which is the Anopheline mosquito.
Okay. And thankfully we don't have
too much of that vector
here.
We used to have malaria, though, in the United States, up and down the whole seacoast.
Really?
In the 1800s and before. Before, there was a time where improvement in landfill and the land masses were filled in the swampy areas, and those vectors really disappeared.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking infectious diseases. We will get to Zika in just a second. We'll get back to Zika because we started there. We're gonna we'll have some fun here. We have a half hour to fill. Dr. Maria Mileno is my guest from the Miriam Hospital, the University of Medicine over at the Miriam Hospital. Insofar as I do want to get back to Zika, because it's sort of the topic of the day in medicine. Explain to folks, how is that transmitted? How are we becoming susceptible to this?
So mosquitoes, a different form of mosquito, the Aedes aegypti, is the most efficient vector, which is a mosquito that is in many tropical climates in the Caribbean.
Which is where I just was.
And also in to some extent in our southern states, there's a population of the Aedes aegypti vector, which, as I said, is the most effective transmitting mosquito for that. While here in Rhode Island in the Northeast, our main mosquito is a different form, is a Culex mosquito, which right now doesn't transmit.
You know your bugs.
A little bit. Kind of like bugs. But the Aedes aegypti would bite, and then a human who is now carrying that virus can be bitten by another mosquito, and that goes from person to person. So it's a mosquito that will not necessarily live in like the Lyme tick. You hear about it being involved with deer and mice intimately in nature. These mosquitoes are strictly biting one human to another, and that's how it's. And the other way it's being transmitted, we are finding cases of sexual transmission as well of the
Really?
Zika virus.
See, I hadn't heard that. Oh, okay. But and I explained this to you. I've become so anti-news lately. So I'm the perfect foil for you this morning because I'm going to learn everything that I need to know.
Yes.
About the disease. So the mosquitoes and sexual transmission.
Right. The predominant way is through mosquito bites.
Yeah. Now, what is it about Rio? Is it just Rio that is just overrun? Overrun? We seem to have this feeling like.
Well, it's Brazil as a whole, and particularly the impoverished areas of Brazil where there's fewer resources, I would say. But also Rio at this time, there are mosquitoes. The government, though, is doing a tremendous amount of spraying and trying to keep everyone safe at the Olympics. Still, there could be scant mosquitoes that are carrying it at this time. But yes, much of Brazil and other tropical countries are carrying this. And it was just the observation of a mother-daughter doctor team in Brazil that really put the link together as to not just the Zika epidemic, but their observation of all these babies they were finding far outnumbering the number they usually see with small brains, the microcephaly. Was coming to they were seeing more and more babies with small-sized heads, and also listening in their community about the Zika, people talking about Zika virus, and that's how they said, well, what if it's Zika virus that's causing this? It wasn't until that human observation of this mother-daughter
putting
team,
two and two together.
Yeah, to say, could it be? And then they found with other evidence. And in other cases in Europe, Slovenia, where autopsy specimens found the virus in aborted fetuses that had Zika.
And what is
that had microcephaly and Zika virus was found, I should say.
For those who have been bitten, what is the percentage of folks that do we know? You've got so much information. I know this is radio, and I'm talking like this is TV that our audience can see it. But you have stacks of information, and you told me before we got started here that this is literally just stuff since like February.
It's really, the data has been burgeoning, or the news coverage has really been quite extensive since February when we first started hearing about these cases and this link that was made about microcephaly and Zika virus. We had some talks at Brown University, a series of talks at the Watson Institute about what is Zika, where did it come from, what should we know about it, and how what is fact versus fiction. So, right now in Rhode Island, I don't think we have a lot to worry about in terms of our mosquito bite today. On the other hand, we do have a similar vector in terms of mosquitoes that carry it. It's a different Aedes mosquito, the Albopictus, which in very small quantities, that again is seen more in the southern states and right up through New York. And right now, our entomologists are looking closely at how many albopictus-type mosquitoes do we have in the area that could possibly transmit Zika. They're very, very few. It's
Right.
there, but it's incredibly few. So I don't think, as a population, we have to worry in New England. But just yesterday in Miami, the health ruling was made to not travel to Miami if you're pregnant. And so Miami had 10 new cases after the day before, featuring 4 new cases of locally transmitted Zika virus. So that means the mosquito bit someone local to Miami and then bit another human, and this transmission has occurred. So Miami's different from where we live. There are many international arrivals from the Latin American countries with people who may be carrying it. And Zika has a potential to be asymptomatic. So it's as a virus itself, it's not the worst virus in the world, it seems, to get, because you get sick with a fever and some red eyes and aching and a flu-like illness with a rash. Most people feel sick for about a week and then they're over it and they're immune. And unlike some other meningitis viruses or other viruses that can be life-threatening, this one, most people will recover and not have any consequences. It's only in the case where someone may be pregnant, and the big focus that the CDC has is really on the pregnant woman,
right,
who could have the potential for that virus to go to the fetus.
Now, say I got bitten, and so you said that there is that for it to be transmitted sexually.
Right.
If I got it,
so
could I pass it to?
So yes, if you were to have a Zika infection, the recommendation is that for 6 months, condom use should be put in place, so that you would not spread it to another woman. But particularly if you have a pregnant spouse or a pregnant partner, that you could readily spread it to, and even to men who have simply traveled to Zika endemic regions. There's a period of time, men should wear condoms even if they haven't had any symptoms.
Wow. So for all intents and purposes, it's not going to affect me as a guy, except maybe with flu-like symptoms.
For the most part, that's the main featured presentation. There's also some rare cases of associated neurologic complications called the Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a profound weakness that can go from the legs upward, and it can be quite life-threatening, and especially people with other comorbidities. If that makes you so weak that your diaphragm is affected, and that you can't breathe, right?
Really?
Then you may
from
need,
the same
virus.
Although
it's not unique to this virus, there are other infectious diseases that can have as part of the syndrome, an associated Guillain-Barré syndrome. But with good intensive care, most people would survive Guillain-Barré syndrome. But people who have underlying heart disease or more elderly people might have a really hard time. And there was the case in Utah of someone who died because of their probable comorbidities, as well as the intense flu-like illness and Guillain-Barré syndrome of the Zika virus.
Interesting. So I just went to the Virgin Islands back in June, which I know is sort of atypical because most people would choose to go to the islands when it's really cold. So, and much as I hate to even forecast this because it feels like winter should be so far away, but yet it's creeping up on us, what would you be recommending to folks who may be looking at a trip to Aruba or to, Mexico or to one of the islands, the Bahamas or wherever, Jamaica?
Sure.
Forecasting 6 months down the road when we're into, some really severe, or 5-6 months down the road when we're into some more severe winter weather here.
Sure. And you really want to go
And you really want to get away.
That's our specialty is to facilitate travel to difficult regions. And at this point, it's not a surprise that many of the Caribbean islands are already infected. And so using proper insect precautions and certain repellents, that some are better than others and more effective, And so being hypervigilant in places where there's transmission is really what I would suggest. Except if you're pregnant, I would say that at this time, since there's so much that's unknown, and the only thing we do know is if your Zika infection gets to your fetus, that there could be a very devastating, complication. I would advise pregnant women maybe
Just
not
to
to go this year.
Look somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now, are there other locations?
And I very rarely do that. Travel medicine is the whole point of this is to facilitate travel. We have business travelers going far to do work. We have students who want to go for semesters at sea, semesters abroad, and explore the world. We have missionaries who are spending 2 years in very remote regions where there's high risk for very severe malaria. And we facilitate and help them get there through, the precautions, the proper immunizations, the proper pills in their pocket in case they were to get sick with diarrhea, and medicines for malaria.
There are no pills or
and there's just nothing for this,
do
right? And
here.
it's sort of an unknown as to whether, like I said, your particular fetus is definitely going to get infected.
So it's not 100%.
It's really not 100%.
We just don't know what that percent is yet.
Right, that's right.
Or why.
There's a lot that's being learned as we go along.
Right. I'm guessing that as we speak, people are in labs right now trying to come up with some sort of a shot or what would you do?
Well, there's vaccine work going on
There is.
now, and it's a real push, but that won't be around for at least a year. I would say that would be a.
Typically, how long does it take to green light something like that? Because it just seems like sometimes you hear about things that are in labs for years, tens of years.
Absolutely.
So how do you push something?
There's a lot of a process that comes in along with a discovery that human subjects have to be tested and it has to be approved. If there's an urgency to releasing drugs or vaccines, there can be an advanced release of something, but. My other hat is I had been a chair and an associate chair of our research review board, and so protecting human subjects and not releasing, unstudied drugs just prematurely is very important.
Yeah.
We need to be safe with our new things.
So if we're telling people, maybe, especially pregnant women, that okay, I know that you love to go to Aruba, but maybe this year, it seems like most of the places that this is happening are sort of tropical and warm. Miami.
Yes, and also in Asia, Thailand.
I was just going to say, are there other tropical places that we're not hearing so much about?
That are going for work. They're going to recruit college students, so their job is to go and spend a month in Asia and maybe in places where they may encounter.
So it is in other more tropical places that we're just not hearing about.
Exactly. Right now, the focus is on Brazil. We have the Olympics here just in a few days, and we'll have many people from all over the world going back to where they live. And if their country has that special vector, the Aedes aegypti vector, it's possible for mosquitoes to bite them and then to bite others and have outbreaks in those locations. And so having this educational message that those individuals, when they get back to the United States, if they live in Florida or Texas, even if they're not sick, they should be wearing insect repellent so they don't get bitten to spread it to others.
Right.
Yeah, so and there's a great fear, I think, of the public about insect repellents that's unfounded, that, we have products that are very safe and effective and
with
a
DEET.
lot of, you're right. Yeah, that's one of the ingredients. Exactly.
Do you have to make sure there's DEET in there?
DEET can be very effective. It's not 100% effective, though.
Right.
If you're, again, in high season in safari in Kenya, you'll be swarmed with insects that have likelihood of having malaria, for example. There's very high likelihood that DEET could repel some of those insects, but not all of them. So those people have to take medication. But once again, DEET is quite safe in certain formulations. Like some have a polymer that keeps the drug right on the surface of skin, so it's not absorbed where it can get toxic. Like in the past, there was a product that it was 100% DEET. I won't say the name of it. In fact, I don't remember the name of it. But it was a 100% DEET product, and it was very thin, liquidy, and people would think that was great for hiking, but they would smear it all over their body. And mothers who took their small babies and smeared it on every inch, some of those babies had seizures from DEET. Okay, now in that formulation, the drug went right through the skin and could be, in those babies, found excreted in their urine. It means it was metabolized through the body, But they came up with a product that has a polymer that keeps the drug, like I said, right on the surface of skin, and it doesn't just evaporate either. That's the other part, is some products you spray them on and, you're in a cloud of spray, and then in 2 hours you're being bitten again because much of that spray has evaporated into thin air, and it's not on your skin anymore. So
I just looked at the clock, and I told you that this could go by very quickly, and we're like into the home stretch here. So before I let you go, and while we just have a little bit more time, what are some of because Lord knows the media never blows things out of proportion, as I roll my eyes here on the radio. But Dr. Mileno, explain to me, are there any things that you've heard or folks in the medical community have heard and they just go, oh, come on, I can't believe they're saying that? Are there some fallacies here that have been put out there that we ought to know about? Are there any things that have been blown out of proportion that maybe we don't want to scare people about?
Right, absolutely. And when they spoke of this outbreak and health warning for Miami, they really are talking about a 1 mile radius of an arts district. And so right now we don't have a widespread epidemic of Zika. And I don't, I do more reading rather than hearing the
talking heads.
Right. That's the way I get my news. It's more online and,
right.
filtered through my interpretations.
But we shouldn't necessarily expect to see CDC trucks rolling down the streets with guys white hazmat, suits.
We will not see that. No,
okay.
No, we will not see that. Should we be spraying and taking care of what we should be doing? Some of the things, hopefully they're letting people know to get rid of any containers that have water in them because that's where larvae like to grow. So we should be caring for our own mosquito bites, making sure that we're not getting bitten. Wear long sleeves, long pants with permethrin that beds right into the clothing and lasts for a month, by the way. You can spray your clothing, let it dry, and it will have a property of killing the insects on contact. Even ticks, we have so much Lyme disease in the state. So I don't want to just focus on Zika.
That's a whole other topic. We'll
but
have
to
have
prevent
you back for
your Lyme disease, right? Socks, sneakers, and your long sleeve pants, long sleeves and long pants could be sprayed. And, so taking care of our own mosquito exposures. And then I think I would have a little extra fear as a pregnant woman, only because I think of birth miracle.
Sure.
And we don't know enough about this to risk going to a place where you could have such a devastating outcome or have to make choices that many women have very much trouble thinking about.
Right. Now, for university medicine, if folks have been listening this morning and they want more information, maybe they said, oh my goodness, we were just thinking about taking a trip. Do you have more information about this, or this? Can they contact you direct?
Absolutely. They could call the clinic at 793-4075, and they could find out about how to make an appointment to see us. There's a website on University Medicine's website, I believe, that you could click on Travel Clinic.
Oh, great.
And see what we do. And yes, it's become a specialist task to advise people, and we house all the vaccines that are for the specialty right there. So it's one-stop shopping. And I never thought I'd sell anything as a doctor, but because of last-minute travelers who sometimes we have going to places of the world where there's such devastating diseases, I have selected some of the best insect products so they could pick up, for a last-minute traveler, they could pick up one or two as they check out. Or we direct them to the website if there's a company's website. It's not my company, and it has their products. There are plenty of other products, but that we've kind of looked into, so they could go on that travel medicine website to get as much as they'd like for groups or things like that.
Okay. Well, we only touched on Zika this morning, but there's so many other topics, and boy, I learned a lot this morning. I'm glad you came in.
Well, I really enjoyed myself. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad that you shared the information, especially as it's been so timely. Dr. Maria Mileno from University Medicine at the Miriam Hospital. Thank you again. We have to wrap this up, however, so we're going to call it quits for this episode, but I'm back again next Sunday. New topic, new guest, and I hope you'll be there too.
If you need more information on today's show or would like to be considered as a guest for an upcoming program, call 401-467-4366 and ask for Phil Marlowe. This has been Upfront on Hall Communications.